Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung has met with Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi in his hometown Andong. The two leaders agreed to work together on energy and supply chains amid the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. With just one day to go before a planned strike by Samsung Electronics union workers, the company and its labor union resumed talks this morning over pay and bonuses. Around 45,000 workers are expected to walk off the job for 18 days starting tomorrow, unless a deal is reached, potentially impacting Korea's economy and global supply chains. U.S. President Donald Trump says Washington could strike Iran again if negotiations fail, saying he had been an hour away from ordering a tap before postponing it. Meanwhile, Iranian state media revealed that Tehran's latest peace proposal involves ending hostilities on all fronts, including Lebanon and the exit of U.S. forces from areas close to Iran. President Lee Jae-myung and Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi had a meeting on Tuesday in his hometown of Andong. They agreed to bolster cooperation on energy and supply chains amid instability in the Middle East. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jang-min reports.
The South Korean president himself received his Japanese guest in his hometown of Andong, along with traditional honor guards. President Lee Jae-myung and Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi reaffirmed on Tuesday their bilateral partnership in the face of global uncertainties.
취임 후 벌써 네 번째 이렇게 만나게 됩니다. 그야말로 한일 간의 셔틀 외교의 진면목을 보여주는 것이라고 생각합니다.
I believe it's very important that we continue developing good relations between Japan and Korea through the leadership of you, Mr. President, and me to play a pivotal role for a stable Indo-Pacific.
The leaders have agreed to strengthen cooperation on supply chains and energy supply amid instability in the Middle East.
양국 간 LNG 협력을 확대하는 한편 원유 수급 및 비축과 관련한 정보 공유와 소통 채널 또한 심화해 나가기로 하였습니다.
We agreed upon strengthening bilateral energy security, including energy supply and a swap arrangement on crude oil, petroleum products, and LNG.
The two leaders also reaffirmed the importance of the trilateral cooperation with the U.S. President Lee also called for South Korea, Japan, and China to cooperate and seek areas of common interest. On historical issues, they agreed on specific procedures for DNA analysis of the remains excavated from Chosei coal mine in Japan, where Korean forced laborers were killed when the mine flooded in 1942. Also discussed was regional peace and security, including North Korea. After dinner, the leaders watched a Korean traditional firework festival called Chulbulnori, combined with a pansori performance. The Blue House says the welcome for Takaichi has been arranged to match the level of a welcome for a state guest, hoping it'll serve as an opportunity for the two leaders to further strengthen their personal bond and trust. Yoon Jang-min, Arirang News, Andong.
And now for a closer look at the outcome of the meeting between President Lee Jae-myung and Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi. We're joined today by Dr. Kim Mi-kyung, Senior Researcher at Gyeongsang National University, Korea Social Sciences Research Institute. Dr. Kim, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So what do you make of yesterday's summit between Lee and Takaichi? What stood out to you the most?
They were very personable with each other. They acted friendly, and they already have broken the ice at personal level. But they also tried, I think, hard to harvest the tangible results from the shuttle diplomacy. And the list of the topics they talked about and agreed upon was actually quite impressive, and both of them emphasized the importance of economic security, with particular emphasis on energy security the supply and reservation of LNG, crude oil, and petroleum products. And they talked about AI cooperation with particular emphasis on space exploration and a transnational scam prevention cooperation and people-to-people exchange. They talked about tourism and cultural exchanges in particular. So, overall, it was a good balance between good personal chemistry from having had 4 meetings ever since both leaders became the top decision makers of Korea and Japan. And at the same time, they are really work-oriented. So very good balance and chemistry and goal-driven attitudes on both parties. So I think it was a very good and successful and future-oriented meeting.
And this is the 3rd time President Lee is holding a summit with Prime Minister Takaichi, right? And it's the 6th time that President Lee is holding talks with a Japanese leader since he took office just a year ago. What does this tell us about the administration's policy towards Japan?
The Lee administration, I think, is very sincere and committed to improve the bilateral relations. I mean, when we think about the past records of both leaders of Korea and Japan, where they did not stop themselves from making potentially offensive and provocative remarks about each other, in particular, I mean, over history-related issues. And Prime Minister Takaichi is still regarded as very hawkish. She has strong support coming from conservative factions of the society. And President Lee also made some remarks about Japan's attitude towards difficult and challenging historical issues. But both of them are trying really hard to stay away from provoking each other over history issues that are still unsettled. And I think they are doing their best to show their sincerity and commitment to improve bilateral relations. Why? Because they need to. We need to work with each other because the world is on the move and unexpected but very serious challenges are taking place in this region. So they need each other. They need to work with each other instead of creating conflicts and tensions over issues that are difficult to resolve.
Right. I'm glad you just mentioned that because a lot of attention was on how these two leaders will address historical disputes. So how do you think they will use this opportunity, this summit, to resolve these historical issues that we have between these two countries?
One of the topics they talked about yesterday included Chose mine project. That is an excavation project of the remainings of Korean forced laborers during the colonial era. And that project has humanitarian implications. So both countries are willing to show the fact that they can work with each other for the sake of improvement of humanitarian concerns. But other issues, for instance, like Dr. Takeshima dispute, Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi mentioned about Japan's ownership of Dokdo, while President Lee Jae-myung has been consistently clear that there is no territorial dispute. So for domestic audience, both leaders are doing what they are supposed to do. As the leaders, they need to think about constituencies and how to play the tunes with public opinion and all that. But both leaders, I think, know that they shouldn't go there when it comes down to bilateral relations. So yesterday, they were focused on talking about Chose excavation project.
Right. And Dr. Kim, before I let you go, what do you think is next for bilateral relations?
Shuttle diplomacy will and should continue. As both leaders have been repeatedly emphasizing the importance of it, because Korea-Japan relations need good chemistry between the two leaders. And the next step would be to institutionalize this shuttle diplomacy by making some sort of governmental level mechanism in order to coordinate smoother cooperation and responsive methods where both leaders can just pick up the phone and talk about the issues as they emerge, so that they can work efficiently and effectively when it comes down to addressing the issues that can influence in positive or negative ways between the two countries. So continuity and the efforts to institutionalize this shuttle diplomacy. And I think both leaders are very, very committed to continue this form of personalized, but at the same time, very purpose-driven way of engagement with each other. So that's what I foresee, but at the same time, I think most of the people in the government would agree with such caution and continued devotion and commitment.
I see. All right, Dr. Kim, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
With the clock ticking down toward a planned strike, Samsung Electronics and its labor union are back at the negotiating table on Wednesday for further mediation talks. The two sides are set to be down to one final sticking point, raising hopes for a last-minute breakthrough. Our Kim Junong has the details.
Samsung Electronics and its labor union resumed talks Wednesday morning on the last day of wage mediation negotiations before a planned strike on Thursday. Talks on Tuesday morning stretched for more than 14 hours past midnight without an agreement, leading the mediator, the National Labor Relations Commission, to extend talks with another session. The two sides are believed to have narrow differences on most major issues, but remain divided over one final sticking point.
One issue still remains unresolved. Most matters have been resolved, and management is now finalizing its position on the final point.
The Commission presented a compromise proposal aimed at bridging the gap between labor and management, with Samsung Electronics reviewing the offer overnight ahead of Wednesday's talks. Meanwhile, union officials remained on site overnight to prepare for the next round of negotiations.
Our union will stay at the mediation venue overnight as we prepare for the next round of talks. Thank you.
Acceptance of the proposal by Samsung Electronics would pave the way for a tentative agreement between labor and management. The union would then move forward with a ratification vote by its members. But if the company refuses or if union members reject the deal, a planned strike could begin Thursday. In that case, the government could also get involved to put a stop to the strike by invoking so-called emergency mediation, which is allowed in situations that are deemed a threat to the economy. Last-minute friction is believed to have centered on how performance bonuses would be distributed across business divisions. The union is calling for 15% of semiconductor operating profits to be set aside for bonuses, with 70% distributed equally across the entire chip division and the remaining 30% tied to each unit's performance. Management, however, argues the structure should better align with its performance-based pay principles, with a larger portion distributed based on individual business unit results. Kim Junong, Arirang News.
South Korea and the United States will soon launch security consultations to implement key agreements reached between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump. Seoul's Foreign Ministry said this morning that U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Allison Hooker plans to lead a U.S. delegation to Korea in the coming weeks. This follows talks with First Vice Foreign Minister Park Yun-ju in Washington on Tuesday. The U.S. State Department said this would be an interagency delegation to launch bilateral working groups aimed at implementing understandings reached during Trump's visit to Korea last October. Those understandings were outlined in a joint fact sheet spanning both economic and security cooperation. On the security side, the two allies are looking to advance major strategic projects, including Seoul's push for nuclear-powered submarines and greater rights over civilian uranium enrichment and spent nuclear fuel reprocessing for peaceful purposes. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump says Washington could still launch military strikes on Iran if negotiations fail, despite pausing a planned attack earlier this week. The warning comes as Tehran pushes a new peace proposal and reports emerge of growing diplomatic pressure from regional allies to avoid further escalation. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that the United States may still strike Iran if negotiations fail, warning that military action could come within days. Speaking at the White House, Trump said he had been about an hour away from approving an attack before postponing it following a new proposal from Tehran aimed at ending the recent U.S.-Israeli conflict.
I was an hour away. We were all set to go. Yeah, it was all done. The boats, the ships are all loaded. They're loaded to the brim, and we were all set to start.
Trump said Iran's leaders are pushing for a deal, but stressed Washington remains prepared to act militarily if talks break down. He also revealed that Chinese President Xi Jinping promised during their summit last week that Beijing would not provide weapons or military equipment to Iran. According to Axios, Trump met with his national security team on Monday evening to review military options. The report said several Arab leaders urged caution, warning that Iranian retaliation could threaten regional oil facilities and infrastructure. Meanwhile, Iran's latest proposal reportedly calls for an end to hostilities across the region, the withdrawal of U.S. forces from areas near Iran, sanctions relief, and the release of frozen Iranian assets. Iran also says Washington has shown more flexibility on allowing limited peaceful nuclear activity under international supervision, though the United States has not confirmed any concessions in the talks. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in Beijing for a state visit, just 4 days after U.S. President Donald Trump concluded his trip to China. According to Chinese state media on Tuesday, Putin's latest visit is his 25th to China. The two sides are expected to discuss economic and energy cooperation, as well as international and regional issues, during the summit talks. Xi and Putin have now met more than 40 times, far more frequently than Xi has met with any Western leader. This year also marks 30 years since China and Russia established a strategic partnership, and 25 years since the two countries signed their treaty of friendship and cooperation. Local elections here in South Korea are entering a decisive phase with a day left until the official campaigning begins. The National Election Commission stressed strict guidelines ahead of the intense period. Our political correspondent An Sung-jin covers the details.
With Korea's local elections around 2 weeks away, political parties are racing against time as official campaigning only kicks off on May 21st. Election campaigning will continue up until June 2nd, one day before Election Day. During a 13-day campaign period, candidates may deliver public speeches and hold debates between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m., though loudspeakers and recording equipment will only be permitted until 9 p.m. Election authorities also reiterated strict regulations against election misinformation, especially the creation or distribution of deepfake campaign materials, which have been banned for 90 days before the vote. Spreading false information or defamatory posts about candidates on social media could also result in legal penalties. Meanwhile, ballot printing for the local and parliamentary by-elections officially began on May 18th, effectively locking candidate names onto voting papers. This entails that the first deadline has passed for rival camps to unify contenders in closely fought districts, since names are already on ballots, pressuring split votes. Nearly 8,000 candidates registered for this local election, and among them, more than 500 are expected to secure victory uncontested. According to the National Election Commission, roughly 13% of the electoral districts had only a single registered candidate, which marks the second highest number of uncontested victories since local elections were introduced. The final figure could still shift if candidates withdraw before Election Day, but the unusually high number of automatic wins has already hinted at political competition and regional party dominance ahead of the June 3rd vote. 안성진, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. A NATO fighter jet shot down a Ukrainian drone over southern Estonia on Tuesday after it strayed into NATO territory. A Romanian F-16 brought down the drone, which Estonian officials said was most likely aimed at Russian targets. Ukraine apologized for the unintended incident and said Russia's electronic warfare systems were responsible for steering the drone off course. Estonia said it has not granted Ukraine permission to use its airspace to attack Russia. Russia repeated a warning that it would retaliate if Ukrainian drones are launched from Baltic countries. 26 more suspected Ebola deaths were recorded in a single day on Tuesday in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, bringing the total to 131 fatalities with more than 540 suspected cases. The World Health Organization Director General told the World Health Assembly in Geneva he was deeply concerned about the scale and speed of the outbreak and said 6 tons of supplies to fight the virus is set to arrive Tuesday. The virus has now reached Butembo, a city of hundreds of thousands. An American doctor who tested positive and 6 others are being moved to Germany for treatment. There are no approved treatments or vaccines for this strain of Ebola. Thailand on Tuesday cut the visa-free stay period for visitors for more than 90 countries, ending a 60-day exemption introduced in July 2024. Most affected nationalities will now be limited to 30 days, with exact periods varying by country. The Thai government cited security concerns and a confusing visa system as reasons for the change. The new rules take effect 15 days after official publication. Google unveiled its latest artificial intelligence models at its annual developer conference on Tuesday as the company moves to keep pace with rivals OpenAI and Anthropic ahead of their expected stock market listings. Google's centerpiece is Gemini 3.5 Flash, a faster and cheaper model that will now serve as the default across its apps and AI search globally. The company now says the new model is its strongest agentic encoding model yet, and code 4 times faster than some competitors. Google also launched Gemini Spark, a personal AI agent that can take actions across connected apps on a user's behalf. A new model called Omni was also announced, capable of editing videos and simulating physical environments.
Rainy and much cooler weather has arrived across the country today. Rain clouds that moved in early this morning are spreading nationwide. The heaviest rain is expected from late this afternoon through tomorrow morning, especially across central regions. The mountainous regions of Gangwon-do province might see up to 150 millimeters of downpours. Most regions will be getting 20 to 80 millimeters into Thursday, along with thunderstorms and strong winds. And this rain is helping break the recent early summer heat. Temperatures will stay cool through tomorrow before warmer conditions return again on Friday. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 20 degrees Celsius. Daegu tops out at 18 degrees, which is about 12 degrees lower than yesterday. Gwangju will be getting up to 22 degrees. Most of the rain will ease by tomorrow afternoon, so keep an umbrella handy till then.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.